I think the problem of people not having reliable sounding boards and role play partners and those types of things is going to get worse, not better, because most of tech isolates us, even though it's not the intention. It's the unintended consequence of a lot of technology, consumer technology is isolating and disconnecting. And so I think this need is just going to get bigger and bigger for a wider and wider set of people.
Welcome to Socially Conscious AI, where we showcase innovative AI applications for social good and interview experts and thought leaders shaping the future of AI with a focus on ethical and inclusive practices. I'm Valencio Cardoso. I'm here with my co-host, Roman Burkott. Roman, how's it going?
I'm excited to welcome James Veraldi, CEO and co-founder of Scenario, the app for role-playing real-life problems and challenges using AI and the clinical science of visualization combined. James has led product strategy for TikTok, content strategy for Snapchat, and was a founding team member of Fullscreen. He's also worked at Accenture, Target, Viacom, and led a digital creative agency for P&G brands. As an angel investor in over 20 companies, he focuses on climate tech and has published over 75 episodes of his own podcast on solutions for global warming and biodiversity collapse. He lives in Portland, Oregon with his partner, 2 dogs, 4 chickens, and some mason bees. James, welcome to the show.
I think everybody who lives in Portland has to have chickens and mason bees. It's sort of a requirement in this town.
Hey, James, before we dive into your background, I know it's an area you're visualizing role-playing combined with AI to help people in stressful situations. Would you mind just quickly describing what Scenario actually is?
There's only one thing you can do in Scenario. It's create a scenario. And when you create a scenario, you just enter in the problem or situation that you're thinking about or tackling. It's on your mind, your own words. So just totally in your own words. And then it walks you through thinking about what do you want out of this situation. It'll give you some suggestions based on the context of what you entered. And it's important that like light guidance is really valuable, because the example I always give to illustrate that is, if the scenario is I want to ask my boss for a raise. Well, the goal shouldn't be I get the raise. The goal should be something like I want to be able to communicate my value. I want to be able to advocate for myself. Then it's going to ask you to describe why this is hard for you, why you find it challenging. And again, there's suggested answers. Those suggested answers too will get more and more accurate with memory. And it will probably get to a point where like you'll just be able to pick one of the suggestions. It'll ask you to think about what could go wrong. That's what we call the conflict. And then it'll take all that information, cross-reference our approach database that our clinical team designs, and recommend an initial approach. Then you just tap a button that says create visualization. And boom, the mock script. It's kind of like seeing a TV script of your life. And you can also listen to it over audio, kind of like an audiobook. And it just plays out that interaction. So if it's that ask my boss for a raise, it's going to mock up you talking to your boss for a raise. And then sitting on top of that is our insights. Insights are like the skills and techniques that are being used in the script around that are really driving the outcome. So that might be something like clearly communicating a want or need. There's a variety of them that can pull from. That's actually the first thing we're fine tuning and using fine tuning for. Is Matt, our clinical science lead, is creating a database where he's identifying the really good insights that GPT is essentially pulling out, that OpenAI is pulling out, as well as the bad ones, and rewriting them for it to kind of reference to get better and better at understanding how to do this in a sound way that Matt feels good about. And then you can play, you can modify, you can change variables, you can try a different approach, you can try a different conflict. Just play. We call it kind of play mode. And you start to sort of figure out how you want to tackle this. That's the idea. Is it's not giving you, like, if you go to GPT directly, it's just trying to predict the next word. It's not really immersing you in the situation. There's something about seeing the whole mock role play that sort of puts your brain in that situation in a more immersive way, and you absorb more of the benefit than if you just go to GPT and it tells you, okay, try saying this next time. It's a very different experience.
That was the thing that really surprised me using the app was the visualization model. I was expecting, based off of my experience playing with various other LLM-based tools, just more of a conversation that had maybe been tuned a little bit towards having these interesting interpersonal interactions. So when the visualization came up, it did such a good job. There was little details about Roman hesitates as he grabs the doorknob before walking into the cafe to have this difficult conversation. And you're right, it painted a picture, it helped me get there and feel like, "Oh, yeah, this is what it would be like to actually go into this situation." And to your point, it felt really empowering to say, "Oh, okay, I've been here before. I know how this is gonna go." Because it added these really great details about what I anticipated to be the other person's problematic responses. One of the things that specifically asked me for is like, "What are you concerned about?" And it was, the other person having big emotional outburst because that was specifically the thing that makes me very uncomfortable. It was really cool and a really refreshing, different take on how to do some of this interaction.
So I think it's helpful to take a step back and detail the problem. We used to all live in tight knit communities. It wasn't that long ago that that was the case. We had people around us to use as sounding boards, to role play stuff with, to bounce ideas off of. What's happened today is people don't live in those tight knit communities. They're not always surrounded by, or often surrounded by people they can do that with, and they're kind of left with sort of role playing it in their own head. We've all done this, whether it's something that we just experienced that was negative or didn't go as we thought it would, or we're battling our own inner critic, or we have something coming up, a first date, or a tough conversation we have to have with a team member or a boss, or even just asking your neighbor to move their car out of your parking spot, which can be annoying sometimes. We ruminate and we role play in our own head because we don't often have people around us. What the last 20 years especially has done is it's kind of isolated us. And yes, we are connected to more information than ever, but we're not connected to support on demand like we sort of used to be. I'm not talking about support as in advanced clinical support if someone is dealing with manic depression or PTSD. There's professional support that's needed there, but just support in these kind of day to day challenges we face, day to day relationships. And so what's happened is when you're left to your own brain, our brains are pattern machines. They're only way they can process all the information that is thrown at us every day is to break it down into repeatable patterns and building blocks. And so what happens is if something is negative or is perceived as negative or experienced negatively, you typically will repeat it in your head negatively. The pattern becomes destructive more than productive. What scenario introduces is a reliable way to have that sounding board, to do that role play with, to imagine. That's why it's based on imaginary visualizations, to imagine how something can go that's different than what's in your head. And a key distinction that we'll probably get into in talking about the product is it's not an advice, it's not a chat bot, it's not giving you an answer, it's not telling you what to do, it's not building a relationship with you. It is merely simulating whatever the problem or situation is at hand while guiding you on thinking about what do you really want? Why is this hard? What's blocking you? And then simulating it in a way that's different than how you're experiencing it in your head. So you can explore different possibilities. You can explore different approaches. You can explore different techniques you might use, things you might say, things you might do, conflicts that might come up. Ultimately, it's guiding you to figure out for yourself how you want to tackle this. And we think that's very important. People want agency, they want control, especially of the things that matter to them the most. Maybe there's some tasks in our day to day that we're happy to give up. But the things that are important to us, we want to be doing ourselves. We want to have the confidence and the control and agency to do so. It's one of those things where if I describe it to people, the reaction is usually, I don't know. I don't know if I need that. I'm good. Once they use it for something real, I think Roman, you've used it a couple times from our previous chats. It's actually just surprisingly helpful. And people get different types of benefits. Some people, it's just breaking a rumination cycle. It's like, oh, okay, I just needed a new perspective. Now I'm good. Some people, they really want to find an approach or a technique or skill. Some people, they discover things like, oh, I'm actually not great at setting boundaries. Maybe I should think about that better. They'll discover those things. So everyone kind of uses it in a different way based on the situation and who they are. But the way to think about it is, yeah, it's like observing a role play of real life situations as you're experiencing in a way that's clinically sound, which we can get into what I mean when I say that, and guiding you towards what you ultimately want in that situation.
What I took away from that was like this power of visualization, right? And being able to interact with AI to play out these scenarios, right? And be prepared before you enter the scenario.
That's probably our primary use case
Mhm.
is something coming up that you want to be prepared for. But the one that I actually use it for the most is when I experience something negatively, I'm an overthinker and it just marinates in my head. The thing I should have said differently, the thing I could have done differently. Literally have a tattoo on my arm that I created that says, let it be. Because it's a reminder that I always need, just let it be. It's a problem I've always had. And scenario for me helps me break that rumination cycle. So I actually use it more often for things that just happen to kind of break that cycle and just it sort of helps me think about a resolution. It doesn't tell me a resolution. Again, it's not like, okay, now do this next. It's not a play by play tool, but that's how I use it. But you're right that the primary use case we see is for things coming up, but the rumination use case is the one I use it for.
I'm sure there's all sorts of like different ways that people are interacting with the app and finding benefit from it. And you yourself just mentioned your perspective, which is interesting because, like, as a co founder, you probably started this because of a problem that you had, right? So, like, would you mind just kind of diving a little bit into your background, like what sort of inspired you to create Scenario?
The journey on building scenario started when I was at TikTok. After we were acquired by ByteDance, we were Musically, for folks that remember that app before we were bought by ByteDance and rebranded to TikTok. I was working out of the Beijing office for the most part. I would come back to the LA office occasionally, but mostly in Beijing. At the time, ByteDance is a much more internationalized company now, but at the time they were not. I had a hard time just adapting and integrating into it's a different work culture. But also, I started getting a little disenchanted by social media more broadly. It's not a TikTok problem, it's a TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, X, Facebook problem. I think I had spent most of my career life, especially when I started this kind of down the startup path in my late 20s till that point, trying to climb the Silicon Valley ladder, a little bit getting caught up in that rat race, struggling a lot with my own relationships in my life, from friends to family to partners to colleagues, and thinking that if I climb this ladder and I get enough success and enough status, well, people will just want to be around me and everything will just click. That's all I need. And I got there, I mean, I was not, to be clear, I was not the CEO of TikTok. I was running product strategy. So I got at the top or in the top circle of running that company. And I didn't really like who I was. It didn't solve all my problems. Shockingly enough, all these interpersonal problems that I thought success would solve for me did nothing for that. If anything, I probably was more miserable to be around. At that time, we were 15, now 20 years into this great experiment when Facebook launched in 2004 of really trying to move our interaction with each other from offline to online. And looking at that and took a step back and say, this is really messing people up. People are struggling more than ever with interpersonal skills and relationships. They're isolated, they're disconnected. It led me down to start thinking and learning about loneliness and social disconnection, and seeing as the more I learned and the more I went down that path, the more I was drawn to recognizing this as really, if not the biggest, one of the biggest problems of the times we're in, a problem that technology is accelerating. And given how much technology itself is accelerating, it's just going to keep getting worse. I mean, it's not just a social media problem. It's also, you think about things like Uber Eats and DoorDash. They've sort of incentivized us with convenience to just sit at home
Yeah.
and order food in. Don't go out and, say hi to your local restaurant. Just stay inside. We'll bring it to you. And I think COVID really shed a huge light on this, because who succeeded the most during COVID? It was the big tech companies. Like, they thrived when everybody was stuck inside on screens. Kind of the dystopian world that a lot, not all, but a lot of tech is pushing us towards. And this just kind of clicked for me while I was at TikTok and doing some self-reflection for the first time really in my life. And I kind of got to a point where it's like, I don't really want to be part of this. I don't want to do this. If anything, I feel, while there's great use cases to TikTok. I have TikTok today. I love my TikTok. It's just dogs and vegan recipes and comedians. It's no conspiracy theory or any of that like stuff on there. So I love my TikTok. But for the most part, TikTok and Instagram, and again, it's not a TikTok problem. It's exploits our vulnerabilities, exploits our anxiety. It disconnects us more. And that's what makes us more addicted to the products themselves. That's what the business model benefits from that. So it's hard if your algorithm is designed to get people to watch more videos, and people watch more videos when you're making them anxious or frustrated, it's going to send you more videos that make you anxious or frustrated. That's not nefarious. That's what the algorithm is tasked to do. So,
Can I jump in real quick on that
yeah.
topic? I've been wondering forever, and to finally have somebody in front of me who actually is intelligent on the subject. Um, are the algorithms aware of like the emotional tone of the content that is reaching people, or is it strictly just hey, this seems to be performing well, therefore I'll feed it more?
Emotional tone, no, not really. But, you know, AI is not, while it's accelerating and can do a lot of interesting things, it can understand context. What it's really looking at is, the elements of the video. TikTok is trying to predict your interests, right? More broadly speaking, not your feelings, not your emotions, not the emotions or feelings that the video is bringing out. It's really more of the interest. It's just math too. It's just all a bunch of data points that turn into ones and zeros like anything else. And your engagement, your interaction. So, like, are you sharing it? Are you looping it? Is it playing over and over again? Even tapping into the comments is a deeper engagement level. All these things inform the algorithm of your engagement level with that video. That video is broken down. At the time, it was dozens or hundreds of data points. Now it's thousands.
Mhm, mhm.
And all those things. I mean, it's at the point where the engineering team at TikTok cannot tell you exactly how it's studying each video, because it is now its own kind of learning model. It's set up to be very personalized. Every single individual user actually has their own different algorithm. So it is off running on its own at this point.
But it
It is
is
a
about
black box.
engagement rather than, oh, this is going to make this guy angry, therefore it's going to perform
No,
well.
it's not
Nothing like
it's
that.
not that.
Okay.
It's not, oh, this user got angry. There's no way to really
Right.
accurately perceive that data.
Okay.
And of course, like, one video that might make you angry might make me happy.
Excellent point.
So it's not going to elicit the same response in everybody. So yeah, it's not an emotionally tuned algorithm. It is a interest based algorithm.
Fascinating. I've just been so curious about that. So please continue on. You were talking about essentially how you arrived at the insight to start scenario.
Exactly. So once I hit that point where I was kind of disenchanted, I guess is the best word, and wanting to be part of a solution instead of feeling like I've been part of problems, that's when I started thinking about what that could look like. I tried to advance a lot of user safety initiatives that became really important to me at TikTok. And I got kind of moved off As soon as I started doing that, I got moved off the core TikTok work and moved into like, okay, you're gonna go work on news apps. And it's just like, we're not doing the safety stuff. Yeah, I eventually like had a conversation with my manager at the time who was just like, yeah, I don't know if this is working for you. I was like, yeah, it's not really. It was a blessing in disguise because it sort of forced me to have to move the next chapter. And the problem that I kept coming up with is this disconnection problem because it's the problem that I've personally had my whole life. I've just really struggled with interpersonal skills, self-awareness sometimes. I even being aware of how I'm making somebody else feel. I was very poor at times. And I feel like this disconnection and loneliness problem was also really being exacerbated by the products I help work on. So it became obvious for me that this is what I need to go pursue. It's personal for me. It's a problem I've had. And man, I might have spent the last 10 years of my life making it worse for people.
I heard a couple things there. One is the organizational algorithm pushed you out and onto something. And then,
Yeah.
that kind of led you to taking a leap of faith and moving towards solving this problem. Just a little bit about scenario, right? Like, how did you choose AI to tackle this problem?
We started with a social audio app. It was kind of like Clubhouse, but for like mental health more topics. We essentially set the topics of each room, like social anxiety, toxic relationships, and imposter syndrome. So we really want to keep it on topic. We don't want to people coming in selling NFTs, whatever they were doing back then. We ran that for the first year and a half between the build and then running it. And we learned a ton. Ultimately, that didn't work from a business standpoint, but we learned that peer support can be super valuable, peer to peer support, but it's inconsistently valuable. Sometimes you're going to run into a room or a conversation that's like, oh, it's exactly what I needed. Sometimes you spend 30 minutes waiting for it to get there and it doesn't. And you're like, that was a waste of time. The second piece was that it was hard to grow as a social app. And I think a lot of us who come from social have this idea of we're going to make healthy social. I know so many people that I knew from my time working at Fullscreen, which was in the YouTube space, at Snap, at TikTok, that leave and like, I'm going to make the healthy social media. Doesn't exist. It'll never exist at scale. So in order for us to scale, we would have to take the guardrails off. We'd have to not set the topics of the rooms or all these guardrails we put on and let people just do whatever they wanted. But then it was going to stray away from the mission. Third, it's hard to monetize, get people to pay for peer to peer support because that inconsistency. The fourth insight was really valuable was that the people who were struggling the most with loneliness or disconnection had the hardest time getting value out of that. And that's because at the time, I think a lot of people have kind of a false understanding of what loneliness is. Loneliness is not solved by just inserting yourself into more social opportunities and social spaces. Loneliness is really when you lack just having really a small handful, two or three high quality relationships in your day to day life that you can rely on and go deep on. If you think you're solving loneliness by getting people to connect with other people more, you're not solving loneliness. You just don't understand loneliness. But a lot of the problem is more like you just lack high quality relationships. You're not going to build high quality relationships in a anonymized social audio. It's just not going to happen. So we also learned maybe the most important insight is we kind of missed the mark on the problem that we were really aiming to solve. So from there, we decided to really social anxiety was one of our most popular rooms. And we thought, okay, social anxiety has a very interesting overlap with disconnection because if you are someone who not necessarily is, there's social anxiety disorder, that's a clinical condition, but there are a lot of people who I would say are sub social anxiety disorder, but still experience social anxiety pretty regularly. And that is going to inhibit connection and interaction opportunities. What we centered on was exposure therapy, which clinically speaking is one of the most effective ways to address social anxiety. There are other ways, of course, but it is clinically very effective. And exposure therapy, of course, is based on a fear. Social anxiety at its core is a fear of rejection or judgment from others. And if you have a fear, the best way to get over that is exposing yourself to it. So we designed an app that would let you create exposure challenges for yourself. I think we were pitching it back then as sort of like the Pokemon Go for social anxiety challenges. What we learned is like people who have social anxiety, asking them to go do the thing they're most afraid of, just go do it on their own is insane. Like they need guidance, they need help. But if they could just go do it just because they entered a goal to do it in the app, well, they probably don't have super severe social anxiety. So we kind of learned that the hard way. But we also learned that the coaches, a lot of people would start to work with these coaches, and we didn't really have a lot of structure for a while, and that wasn't great either because it kind of, when you don't have a lot of structure around coaching, it can really bleed into therapy or therapy light, and that there are ethical reasons that you should not go down that road. That was happening a little bit, but we started putting some structure in it. And the structure we put in was like, let's do visualization exercises. Let's have the coach kind of like do an imaginary visualization with the person over text message. It was kind of at the tail end of this experiment. The other things have not worked. We're kind of at the end of our road here. Don't know if we're going to make it as a company much further. Like this has been a grind. And we threw this experiment out there, and lo and behold, people liked it. They like doing these imaginary visualizations. They found it useful. They found it helpful. You're getting good feedback loops back in. But it's really hard to scale coaches doing that over text, and doing it back and forth over text has like a latency problem and it's not super immersive. This was now in the spring of 2023. And the light bulb kind of went off right then and there. It's like, oh, we have this incredible tool has come to market in the last 6 months called Gen AI. We could harness this and do visualizations at scale for people. And that we kind of rebirthed the company at that moment last summer, reshaped the team a little bit towards, the team we felt we needed to go execute this vision. And we've been on that road ever since. And it's been great. It's been now being used by people that not just socially anxious, but folks who are procrastinators or feeling overwhelmed or overachievers or folks who are neurodivergent. There's a lot of different psychographic profiles in the app.
So you kind of touched on the importance of the ethical importance of delineating between like coaching and therapy. And so now with your new model being powered by generative AI, I imagine it's even more important for you to kind of mind the difference and the technical definitions. How do you navigate some of those challenges?
We were very, very thoughtful of how we don't present scenario as a clinical tool. We do say it's clinically sound, it's based on clinical science. Those are true, but it's not a clinical tool. It's not a replacement. It's not a replacement to a therapist or a coach. We have a lot of our users who use it in conjunction with working with a coach or therapist, and they tell us it's a really kind of 1+1=3 model for those folks, because they'll use scenario and they'll kind of gain access to ideas or skills or techniques they want to go deeper on, and they'll go work with their therapist or coach on there or talk about it. It'll open up kind of conversation opportunities. A lot of the work we're doing over the next few months is getting this kind of communication, positioning stuff right. We actually have a vision of working with coaches and therapists. So down the line, so if like someone is using scenario and there's signals that detect that, maybe they might be experiencing PTSD, for example. Well, how can we route them? Today, the app actually will detect a number of safety things ranging from the obvious, like suicidality, to maybe less obvious, more serious things like eating disorders. And the app will kind of detect that and route you to publicly available free resources for now.
You mentioned analyzing the user's interaction after the fact, that you're using that data to improve your operations, to improve the experience ultimately, to provide additional safety. How are you going about keeping that user's information safe? And how do you reassure people who have heard negative things about disclosing sensitive personal information to these LLMs?
So people are not interacting directly with an LLM on the app. They're not interacting with GPT in this case. We are using GPT to help bring dialogue and narration into the like into the simulation that you're kind of observing and reading through. And when we get to interactive role play, we'll use it, but we'll have an intermediary step where we're kind of analyzing what you're doing before responding. And we're using it to help us understand the context, break down the context. We're starting to fine tune that model with our own clinical data sets. But one unique thing is approaches. That's kind of the heart and soul. That's the bridge of, okay, I have a problem and then I need to visualize a solution. The connecting point is the approach that you're taking. That's all designed by our clinical science team. So we have hundreds of approaches that our science team has created. They'll expand over time. We've trained OpenAI how to retrieve them based on the context of the situation, but we don't allow OpenAI to generate its own. So that is important, the distinction on how we use the language learning models. In terms of safety, it is in our not only in our privacy policy, but people just check those boxes in onboarding. The first time you use it, you will see before you enter your visualization, you will see a dialog box that says the situation data you're putting in here is being sent to OpenAI. And it's in that system. It's not tied to your personally identifiable info. That's your account. That's separate with us. But just the ad hoc situation you're working on is being sent over there. So we do disclose that. We have a data policy for our internal team as well, where only our clinical science lead, Matt Skull, is permitted to look at the account information and the scenario information together. So what I can do, for example, is I can only look at each one independent of each other. So if I want to do some user research, I can look in mixed panel and just see the events. Like Roman, I can see maybe you've done 3 scenarios. I don't know what they are. I can't look them up what they are. I can only see Roman has done 3 scenarios. Okay, well, I'm looking for some feedback from recently active users. You fit that bill, so I'll reach out to you for user research. The other way we do it is I can look at the random list of scenarios, but I can't see whose they are. Only our clinical science lead, Matt, can look at both together. That's our policy for our internal team. We actually drafted that in a way for our own because we all use the product and we don't really want to be knowing each other's personal challenges. What there could be with another one of our team members. So we kind of
Help
built
there
that
for a
policy for
difficult
ourselves.
conversation with James, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then we take a lot of security protocols on. We store those in one password we use for our own access internally. There's a lot of security around that, and as we grow and scale, that'll just be an ongoing investment to continue. That's not a project that it's ever over. Data security doesn't end. It's something you just keep adding to as you go forward.
I just want to flip around to the other side, the people using it. What sort of impact have you started seeing from people or feedback that you've been receiving?
Yeah, that's probably the part that makes us feel the best and the strongest about what we're doing is what we're hearing from the folks using the app. And we get that both in the app, you can leave feedback directly, and we also do it through our qualitative interviews. The themes that are most consistent are 1, people feel more confident in whatever they're using it for. 2, they feel a more sense of control and kind of agency around it. Those are the things that stick out the most. And, it's great. It's like that's the intention of it. I guess the third thing, which is also very important, is we hear from people that they're going and doing it in real life. It's helping them combat avoidance, for example. It's helping them actually lean in. They might not be taking the specific approach or skill that was in that mock role play, but they might have the confidence built up to like, okay, I already knew what I wanted to say to Roman, but I just was avoiding it. But after doing a couple role plays, I'm ready to go do it. But I already knew what I was going to say. That happens a lot too. So those are the three things: is like increased confidence, increased feeling of control and agency, and increased rate of doing the thing, whatever it is. And hopefully we can continue to deliver all those things as we grow.
In what ways do you see like sort of scenario growing um, to help sort of the broader community, like beyond just managing individual stress?
Well, if we did nothing else but help everybody manage individual stress, I think we'd be very satisfied and we'd be a very large company. So I don't think we need to go beyond that. That's a big problem. I think that's where we'll always kind of stay is like a personalized companion to just navigate the challenges of day-to-day life that you can trust, that knows about you, that knows about your patterns, your tendencies. We're kind of building in V1 of memory right now, which is exciting initiative for us. And that's how we think about it. It's like your, go-to tool that you always have at your disposal. Life will always throw you curveballs. Like even when things are going well, things change. And I think having, again, like hundreds of years ago, not even that long, maybe 50 years ago, we used to all be in these really tight knit communities. Like we used to live with our elders, we used to live with our, family members, extended family members. You'd have someone like, hey, I got this thing going on. Like I just, wanted like need a sounding board. We still all have that. And I think more and more, I think the problem of people not having reliable sounding boards and role play partners and those types of things is going to get worse, not better, because most of tech isolates us, even though it's not the intention. It's the unintended consequence of a lot of technology, consumer technology is isolating and disconnecting. And so I think this need is just going to get bigger and bigger for a wider and wider set of people. It's funny when we first started exploring building this product last summer, our designer JJ, his first pass was kind of a chatbot conversational UI. And we all thought like, yep, that's it. That's what everybody wants. That's like even me. Like that I was like, yep, that's what people want. I look at them using GPT. This makes sense. Go and as we've so happy we didn't, there was something that didn't feel right about it at the time that we didn't quite I couldn't quite put our arms around. I actually think it was Jonathan, to give him credit. He's our engineer. He's a great kind of like contrarian. Like Jonathan, he's one of those people who he doesn't speak up often, but when he does, it's like very, very helpful. Versus like someone like me who's just like speaks too often. Jonathan is like as the opposite. I love him. He's the best. And I think it was him who said, you know, let's not run. This is like a big technical build to do this. Let's learn a little more before we kind of go down that path. And he was absolutely right, because conversational UI, chatbot UI is not the way to help people navigate these problems. I've seen other apps that have come out trying to help people with these types of problems, and they're all using chatbot UI because it's like that's what people want. Look at GPT. And we try to use these products and it's just it just feels sterile. And there's something very different that unlocks in your brain. Like if just having this kind of sterile, like fake person chatbot telling you, kind of consoling you and telling you what to do. It's just like, I know you're AI. Like this is weird. Something very different about that versus kind of immersing you in a simulation of that where you see yourself talk. You kind of observe yourself. And there's a powerful difference in there that I'm very, very happy that we didn't go down the initial UI path that I thought my first instinct was like, yeah, that's it. All kind of thought about it, like, doesn't feel so right. Let's wait. And Jonathan was the one who was like, no, let's really wait. Like, yeah, it doesn't feel right. That's why the team is so important. Our group of people are fantastic. there's zero chance we would be where we are today without each of the 5 people on this team. Zero chance.
I was super impressed with the overall user experience, and, like, I thought it was super innovative how you guys kind of bridge that gap between, like, me interacting with a UI to now going into this scenario, and that's just that psychological switch. I think the way that you kinda led us there, the interaction model leads you to that is fantastic, and I think it's super important because now you're touching on mental health, right? How do you see the role of AI in mental health? I know you touched on it a little bit about other apps using chatbots and stuff like that. How do you see the role of mental health changing over the next few years?
AI is neutral, just as neutral as the internet is or any other technology breakthrough is. It's really how you apply it and the sort of fences, what I call the fences, the guardrails you put around that application that matter. I think in the mental health space, there's some mental health fatigue out there because we kind of overuse that as well. The last 5, 6 years have been terrible for therapists and terrible for the quality of therapists in a lot of ways because we're especially BetterHelp and Talkspace, the 2 giants in this space. Everyone is trying to push people into therapy for everything because they've set up business models that incentivize for that. But what's happened is therapists are having to work the dollar amount they make on a per minute or per session basis has dropped significantly. And they have to make up for that with quantity. Therapists are burned out. The high quality of therapists, the really good ones, don't really need demand help. They usually have wait lists. It's the sort of less trained, less rigorous therapists or counselors that are just cleaning up as much as they can. I'm going to do 30 clients a week on BetterHelp. I have to make a living because now I'm only making 24 bucks an hour instead of 70 bucks an hour, because there's like a just downward pricing pressure on telehealth. And therefore the quality of that therapy is not good. We're over prescribing it in a way, like that BetterHelp ad, like, oh, you had an interaction today that wasn't great. No, you don't need to rush to a therapist. Like, how about we equip people with other tools? Like, that's how we think about it. Therapy is fantastic, but it's when it's used for the right things. Like, it should be used for the deeper problems, like the deeper self analysis, sort of understanding of yourself. Like, scenario is never going to sort of help you understand the depths of your soul and the depths of your mind in the way a great therapist would, and nor should it. It should be a different tool. Scenarios there to help you just navigate things kind of day to day in a just sort of friendly, easy way. But when like I would hope everybody can get a therapist if they can, if it's accessible to them. What's happened in the mental health space is it's sort of like you have telehealth on one hand, and telehealth has just been like overly prescribed now, where there's like just fatigue on it. And also like a therapist session over Zoom or not nearly as effective as in person. But again, because it's just about scale, we got to just blow up these business models as much as we can. The second thing is for the kind of non telehealth interventions, the sort of the different types of apps and products out there, it's been really hard to navigate the trade off between engagement and efficacy. To date, you've really had to really bet in either one. Like if you really push high in engagement, you're probably pushing against efficacy in most cases. And if you really push high on efficacy, there's a lot of really wonderfully designed products out there that are very clinically sound, but they have no engagement. They can't retain people. They just can't sustain as businesses, or they have to pivot and try to do B2B or through employers and stuff, which has become also like really cluttered with like too many people trying to sell to employers. And so I think the holy grail is like, hey, can you crack that code of, you know, having both efficacy and engagement? We'll see if we can do that. I think we have that in very small numbers today in the beta, but can we do that as we grow and scale? Like that's the big question here. And I'm not going to sit here and say like, yeah, we definitely will be able to. I hope I think we can. We obviously our investors think we can. I firmly believe we can and we will, but that's the bet. Like, can we do that at scale?
I think it's obvious. I'm a pretty big fan, and that's one of the things that really struck me about your model is that it does seem like something that is scalable in the way that, ChatGPT could be scalable, that it's something, to your point, it's not as heavy as signing up for a therapist and having to schedule and take time out of my day and all that. It's just something that, if I have something that I'm anticipating, I can turn to the app real quick. And I would anticipate that you'll be very successful in that regards. James, I'm really enjoying hearing about Scenario and your company and your journey, but I also know that you're a person that has some really big and deep thoughts about the world at large. So I wanted to open it up to you. I know you have a podcast of your own. What's something that you haven't talked about that you might like to spend a few minutes on?
Yeah, like outside of the scenario world, the place I'm probably most knowledgeable in is in the climate problem. It's where I do a lot of personal advocacy work. I just actually gave a talk recently in Portland on why we need to stop using the words climate change to talk about this problem. It's actually counterproductive. And we should be talking about it in global warming and biodiversity loss, which obviously are the two kind of key prongs that bubble up to climate change.
Do you have any early thoughts on how AI could contribute to solutions in those areas?
I think what people forget about the most, and what I always talk about, is the biggest problem with addressing the global warming and biodiversity crises is not a technology one. It's purely marketing and communications. Maybe that can be sort of aided with AI in terms of how messaging is customized to certain individuals, but it has a communications problem. That's why I say we shouldn't even talk about it as climate change, because it kind of creates an opening for that classic straw man argument of the climate is always changing, because it is. That is true science. But it sort of creates an opportunity for someone to rebuttal with that stupidity. If you're not very well educated, which most people are not, like, you can't ask everybody to like be educated on climate science. It's absurd. People have like difficult, busy lives, and we all have different skill sets and different knowledge areas. So if someone just says, "Oh, did you know the climate is always changing?" and all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, yeah, maybe this is kind of exaggerated. Like, climate is always changing, isn't it?" And it's just kind of someone goes down that path. But the biggest problem there is communications and marketing, and in my mind.
I appreciate your perspective on like climate and kind of coming back a little bit to scenario and sort of the mental health and mental well-being space. James, what are you optimistic about? What are you optimistic about in terms of like scenario, the direction it's going, where you see kind of the impact that you're making?
So I think from a mental health perspective, one thing that has been really good is it is getting destigmatized. People are more comfortably talking about and comfortable talking about their mental health challenges. They're more likely to seek out solutions than they were 5 to 10 years ago. So I think the destigmatization of mental health, while there are some, extreme versions of that are problematic, on aggregate, it's been really good. And I think we should be optimistic about that people are comfortable, like, seeking out these things now and talking about it with each other and normalizing it to a degree. So I think that's something to be optimistic there. I I think, like, the biggest problem in general we have does lie in Silicon Valley because of the enormous impact it has on our information, our well-being, how we operate, how we live, how we work. And what I'll say is there's the dominant view in the tech industry today is a dystopian one. I call it the Mark Andreessen sort of view of the world. They look at the problems we have in society, the bigger problems we have, and they think, you know what? It's so hard to solve these things. What if we just made life convenient and easy for people as much as possible? Like, how about we just do that instead? And I think a lot of the stuff does come from that intention. It's not like, oh, here's people to exploit. Some people it might be, but I think often it's just like, oh, shouldn't we just make life as easy and convenient? And they don't think about sort of the agency you're taking away from people when you do that over and over again. I see companies sometimes with this pitch where our mission is a world where humans don't have to work. Like, are you insane? How is that going to help people at all? Everyone needs purpose. And how are you going to take care of everybody when they're not working? We're all just supposed to live on universal basic income. You think that's really going to sort of move? You think people are going to have that UBI level is going to be above just like basic living? You think people are going to be thriving on UBI? Where like we can't even pay for universal healthcare right now. A lot of the heavyweights in tech are pushing us down this dependency on technology. It's good for them business wise, but it also like they convince themselves that making life easier and convenient is the solution all the time. And I'm kind of, you know, painting, I know, a kind of like dystopian view that's decades or 100 years out, but it will eventually get there if we keep going down this path. It'll be an existential crisis to this planet well before global warming is. So going back to your question, optimism, I do see that more and more people, and it's a small collection of us that work in tech that have some, had some success or influence or, some degree of, kind of experience, are seeing this train moving this way and don't kind of want to be on it and want to direct it towards, using technology for, for the right applications. And I do see that popping up more and more. I've started sharing these things more on LinkedIn, for example. And I can tell the people that like them are people I've often worked with, or that maybe identify with what I'm saying, but maybe they're stuck in that rat race I was in at TikTok. But I do think there is this recognition that where the tech industry is, where a lot of the heavyweights of tech industry are taking us, is not where we want to go as a species, as a planet. And it's time to kind of unplug from that matrix, if you will, and start to build an alternative path.
You were mentioning, people kind of breaking away from this, removing all the friction and just trying to make everything super smooth, but to the point that eventually it's actually disadvantageous to us. There's people who are kind of working in the other direction. And I'm just curious, like, who do you consider some of those people, or what are some of the projects that you look at that you see as being the alternative? So like, is it backyard gardening? Are you talking about digital things? Like, what do you have in mind when you talk about the alternative?
There are. So yes, in the sense that I think the world that we probably want to see is one that is dominated again by small, medium-sized businesses, not giant monopolies. So I do think that, those kind of like backyard projects are great. And like, there's a lot of companies but even thinking of like some companies at scale, the one that comes to mind that I always reference, and a founder I take a lot of inspiration and learnings from, is Tala, which does microfinancing for East Africa, parts of Latin America, India, Southeast Asia. And she's built a really big, great business off of loans that are typically under $500 each to people that otherwise can't get them. And they almost always pay them back because, they're using it to start a very tiny business or a small restaurant or a fruit stand or whatever it is they're doing. And so I think that's a great example. An app like Strava, that has gotten success. And what is Strava? I mean, all Strava really does is get you to bike and run more. Like, it's pretty great product. My girlfriend is a huge Strava fan, huge fan of those founders and how they've gone about building that. It's a shame that some investors look at Strava and say, oh, what is that worth? A couple billion? Waste of time. Like, if someone come on, like, it's like they've built a pretty big business doing really good stuff. There is some like great innovation out there. in the food space, in the food sector as well. So I think vertical farming, I think, is a good thing. There are some overused applications of it that, again, that's the problem sometimes, is you start with a really good solution, and because you have to just grow forever, it's hard to do that and stay ethically sound. But some companies have done that well. Yeah, I think like there are examples of that. I'll tell you guys an idea. It's just an example of like a wackadoodle idea that actually be really good business and really fun. I call it Leave It to Beaver. And essentially, a lot of our water ecosystems in the United States, one of the biggest problems of why they need so much servicing from the US Forest Service for contamination and stuff is we've eradicated beavers. We've just totally got rid of them initially through obviously the fur industry, but also they're kind of pests to farmers and ranchers historically without great interventions. And now they're just not there anymore. Well, beavers do a really important job of essentially the pools they create often trap sediment from kind of getting into essentially clean the water supply. They pool that sediment away. They prevent flooding at certain times of year because they give water outlets to go down, and that flooding can cause ecological damages. They're just incredible. They're called ecosystem engineers for a reason. Well, the amount of money, I look at this river in Utah that's been particularly problematic as a water supply source for a lot of local communities, and it's been dwindling. You also probably know a lot of our natural water supplies in the West, the Colorado River is the biggest one, have been shrinking. Well, the U.S. Forest Service spends tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars every year trying to maintain this. And if you look at the science, all they really need to do is bring beavers back. They don't need to spend all this money. They just need to repopulate beavers, and it would do a tremendous amount of good. So the idea is like essentially charging the US government for beaver repopulation. And the math works out that each individual beaver each year in this area is worth like $3,200 a year of economic value. You could charge the government essentially $3,200 per beaver, and it would economically make sense for them, and it would save them money actually from what they're spending today. So there's crazy ideas out there like that I'd like to see happen.
Leave it to beavers to save the world, right?
Yeah, and what better name than Leave It to Beaver? Like, imagine how fun it would be creating that deck. Here's the product: beavers. Oh, and you could just see like a tech investor say like, "Oh, AI beavers? No, beavers. No, just beavers. Like we're actually just beavers. That's it."
James, like this has been a fascinating conversation. Really appreciate your passion and your insights into everything that you're doing. I do have one final question to kind of wrap things up, right? From your perspective, like as an entrepreneur, what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs looking to create AI solutions to make a positive impact on society?
Yeah, it's very easy. Be extremely thoughtful about how you're applying it and those guardrails you put around it. Like that's what I echo all the time. Those are the two most important things: how you're applying it, what the guardrails are.
That's wonderful. Keep it simple. And I think that's super important. Um, where can people find Scenario online?
So right now we're just iOS only. So if you just go into the App Store, if you're an iOS user, and type in Scenario, should be the first thing that comes up. We will probably be launching Android this fall.
Do you socialize online? Is there a place people could reach out to you if they wanted to continue the conversation?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the only one, which I have reluctantly, begrudgingly accepted because I'm not a social media person. But LinkedIn, yeah. LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach me online.
Very cool. Well, I also have enjoyed this immensely.
Great talking to you both, Wells. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us for the Socially Conscious AI podcast with our guest, James Veraldi. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And why not share this episode with someone who could benefit from this conversation? For Valencio Cardoso, I'm Roman Burkott. Until next time, stay curious, stay conscious.